Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Okay, my name is 𝘁𝗵𝗆 and on behalf of TeamLease, Education Foundation, Next Education, Friends Union, Energizing Fuel, Railways Children, and UBS Forum, I welcome you all for this exclusive conference on 5th edition of Corporate Social Responsibility Summit and Awards. First, I'd like to thank all of you for sparing your time and joining this summit. Now, giving a brief idea about this conference, as you all know, today, the entire world is facing and overcoming a crisis of magnitude that no one had ever anticipated. COVID-19 has shaken the entire world and the economy at large. This situation had made many corporates' minds ponder and take a step in playing the part to be socially responsible to meet the need of the hour. This has similarly affected the corporate CSR. Additionally, with the spread of COVID-19, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs was quick to decide that spending of CSR fund for COVID-19 will be considered qualified CSR activity. With the continuous circumstances, it is significant for CSR leaders to comprehend that their CSR exercises are more important and advantageous. In this conference, let us hear from the CSR civil society leaders across India what are the challenges, roadblocks, and learning outcomes dependent on their experience, and examine the best strategies and association CSR heads are embracing in this current situation. And to set the context, let me invite our keynote speaker for the day. And for that, I would like to invite Rajiv Williams, who is the corporate head CSR with Jindal Stainless Steel Limited Group. To give you a background for Rajiv, and he's also a brigadier. Brigadier Rajiv Williams sought premature retirement from the Indian Army and joined Jindal Stainless Steel. He has served at different war and peacetime locations, having spent nearly 2 decades in Jammu and Kashmir, including some of the most difficult areas in Dras and Kargil and 𝘁𝗵𝗆 Glacier. Brigadier has been a member of board for many organizations, including the United Nations Global Compact Network, UNGC, as a convener for UNGC Human Rights Committee. He created the Indian CEO Forum for Business and Human Rights under the chairmanship of Mr. Narayan Murthy, Chairman Emeritus 𝘁𝗵𝗆. His civil award includes the Singapore-based Asia Pacific Leadership Award, 10 Most Powerful Impactful Global CSR Leader Award by World Congress CSR Congress, Top 25 CSR Leaders in India, Human Rights and Most Excellent CSR Award, and Mahatma Gandhi Award for CSR. Please welcome Brigadier with big round of applause.
Today's challenging times. Take off your mask. We're all masked. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak today and talk something on today's challenging times. I mean, we've got a familiar ground here. We've got people who are familiar to the environment, to corporate social responsibility. But corporate responsibility with a change is what I'm going to be speaking to you about. And I think it's important, though I've put some slides here. I don't think I need to really work on this presentation that my colleagues have put up for me. But I come from Jindal Stainless Limited Group of Company, the head corporate social responsibility for the group. And we must understand that OP Jindal Group is the umbrella organization with 4 different company groups, the 4 brothers. Whether it is Jindal SAW or Jindal JSW Steel in Mumbai, Sajjan Jindal. I'm with the 3rd brother, Ratan Jindal, who's exclusively working on stainless steel. And his wife, 𝘁𝗵𝗆, she is the chairperson of the Jindal Stainless Foundation. And all the CSR activities are done through the foundation for the group. And the youngest brother is Naveen Jindal, who heads the 𝘁𝗍𝗄𝗆. So I just wanted to clarify, I'll focus exclusively on the Jindal Stainless Limited Group of companies and what we are doing, and especially in today's context, and that's the topic of today, today's challenging environment. I mean, there is a challenge here because everything has changed over time. The pandemic has created the whats and the hows to do CSR. How do we really get involved with this particular context? कैसे करना क्या है? I mean, there was such a difference of understanding that we are too busy in our own environments, we are too busy with our working, we are too busy in the stereotype of pattern that we've been adopted, and suddenly pandemic struck. Everything stopped. Last week I was in Australia driving down from Alice Springs to Cairns, the Great Barrier Reef. There were such beautiful posters en route, and that's a 2,500 kilometers drive, no one around. But they kept on having to stop, revive, survive. Those lovely little hoardings that you see when you drive down, I realize that here also, in today's context, is that we've got to stop. We've actually stopped. And I think those three important steps in this journey of this revival situation, of this change that is taking place, is there was an absolute stop. There was time to think through and revive the situation, because that is the only way that you can survive. And I think in corporate social responsibility, the business activity, we've got to understand this nexus between joining with each other and going to scale. And how can you go to scale? You can only go to scale when you have got partnerships in place. Tata Steel, Jindal Steel, 𝘁𝗵𝗆 Steel. To get the corporates together is not easy. ये क्यों कर रहा है? Why is he wanting to partner with me? That question mark. Isn't that right? आप समझ रहे हैं ना? That's the problem that we are faced with. And that's why we need organizations like UBS, organizations like Third Party Global Compact, who can network and get people together so that we can converse, we can talk, we can share. That's the change that is required. That's the thing that we've got to understand, is stop, think through, and then proceed further. And my talk today is on these three issues of 3 steps of sustainable living. Stop, revive, survive. The corporations have to look beyond business. Everybody is focused कि हमारा bottom line कैसे increase होगा, how do we make more profits, how can we save here, cut costs there, think of short-term gains, forget about sustainability issues. That has to change. And the third piece is, whatever we are doing, is it okay that we just talk over here? Or do we act on the ground? Do we want to see the change that we want to be part of for the future, for our children and grandchildren? That's the usual thing which everybody hears. The stories are same. We've been hearing about this, but how many of us are talking about it? And talking by genuinely acting upon what we speak. So the first part itself is the 3 steps that I have been sharing, is that we have got to understand that we've got to stop and care for each other. How do we care for each other? Do we do it? And whether it's caring of just the challenge of the work environment, the challenge of letting those migrants move out helplessly, that girl carrying her father 1,200 kilometers away to Bihar. Do we really care? As individuals, do we really care for our own helpers and for our servants and for whoever you want to call? The 𝘁𝗵𝗆 कर्मचारीज, the waiter, the guy who gives you tea, do you say thank you? कि हमारे egos बहुत ज़्यादा है. That's the change that we have to think about at the individual level. Do we feel comfortable that when we are driving down, we just throw the bottle outside? Who's going to pick it up? Are we impressed with the fact that this is a dark arena where you have got adequate light, so we are saving on energy? घर पे जो है सब लाइट ऑन करके बच्चे पंखा ऑन करके चले जाएंगे, ACs are on. That's the individual responsibility. Just stop, think. And the collective responsibility of collectively corporations doing this kind of a thing is corporate social responsibility. How do we do it? How do we actually engage? How do we want to actually engage in tomorrow's context? Today we are here after a gap of many years, of 2 years. I mean, that's the revival that is taking place now. The initial, the plethora of casualties, the deaths that took place in the first phase, and even the second phase of COVID was stressful. So how do we do CSR when this kind of a thing takes place? No movement, no travels. At corporates, many of us, of course, have had to, perforce, give that option of work from home. Our own production level sometimes dropped. The bottom lines dropped. But there were the smart guys who made max money during the last 2 years. They must have stopped and they must have realized, but there is an issue. How do we move forward? What do we do? Do we make sure that, in our employees, the most important thing is motivation. I'm from the army, and I'm from a hardcore infantarian. Battle for me is looking after that youngest soldier of yours, because he and me together have to be together in the front. We can't sit in our offices and tell that guy, climb that height of 21,000 feet and capture that post. You have to be with them. You have to connect with them. And I'm speaking from the heart because I know what is difficulties in war and what are the difficulties in peace. And that's why I shifted from the army when I took premature. I said, let me get down and join with. That time CSR had just about started in India. So I feel there's a lot of ownership, whether we have one program, whether we the other programs, which I'll be touching very shortly and very briefly too. So we've got to see in the revival phase, how can we mitigate the problems, the challenges that are being addressed? You all are, I'm sure, we've got guys from Deloitte and we've got guys from KPMG and from other sustainability agenda, is on that prime focus. ESG, everybody's talking about ESG. I mean, I've been talking about this the last 10 years. World over, the ESG became an important tool in India today. Because the investors, the bankers, your customers are looking, "Kimne kya kara kya ESG mein?" All buzzes are taking place and all corporations are getting engaged in this. CSR from the back room has come to the boardroom. That is the revival for survival. Human rights. Nobody spoke about human rights. Even the 13 articles that are given in section 13 of Article 135, there's no space for human rights. I'll touch upon that a little later too. So obviously when we have to do this for survival and for revival, and to survive, you've got to act very fast. When we act very fast, we realize that things move. We are talking of a climate change agenda. COP26, May 27 will meet, Agenda 2030, UN SDGs to be fulfilled. India says 2070 will be our target. Good. But we've got to make a difference here. हम ground पे कर रहे हैं कि नहीं कर रहे? And that is what is the responsibility of corporations to get engaged in. To see how we can change the world by contributing through the national indices that are there. Try and see how we can cap on carbon dioxide emissions. See how we can put systems in place and energy-related issues right at the bottom of the pyramid. And in CSR, also in domain, we do exactly that. So beyond business, when I talk of, I am aware of the fact that all these programs and some more, all of us are doing. I don't want to deep dive into all of them. And there was a lady who asked me, kya kar rahe hain aap log? I said, just have a look. You know, there's nothing different to what somebody else is doing and maybe others are doing much more. But where I want to deep dive is on 3 projects. Here are some pictorial presentations of various programs of ours. 3 projects, sustainable agriculture. Now, in today's changing environment, I'm talking about agriculture and agriculture. Maximum arable land in the country, maximum contribution of carbon dioxide emissions and methane and other NOxes and SOxes are by the corporates and by the farmers. I mean, agriculture is emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. It is polluting the environment unless we change the old age methods used by farmers. Unless we provide them some solutions of reducing the water intake in their plants or in their cropping systems. Unless we tell them the climate resilient technologies. Unless we give them the digital technology to transfer. Unless we tell them to think differently. It's so challenging. But we started this project a few years ago. A few years ago to make an impact in a smaller geography, which over time has been replicated across many districts of the country, that model. Trying to provide end-to-end solution. Trying to find out what is the problem with that soil, what nutrient does it need, what kind of problems that are being faced by the farmers to ensure a better quality of the product so that the markets are available. So हम क्या करते हैं? Pulses, millets and everything else. We are standardized rice eaters in, let's take in Orissa. That's where our major plant is. Local, kharid lenge. But the big players like Rocket and Cargill and others, they need good quality. Now that good quality comes from capacity building of the farmers, teaching them some practices and making sure that quality control is to the highest so that the buyer buys directly from the farmers. And then we have got the mandi system in between. Break that nexus. That's the very big challenge. How do we market that product or that produce? I know we've been able to negotiate because of this initial project with Naveen Patnaik, the Chief Minister of Haryana himself being present for the MOU signing ceremony between Jindal Stainless Limited, Grand Hyatt Foundation, our implementing agency, and the government of Orissa. So when we took that MOU and started working in the districts, there was a change, slow. And when we took that to Haryana, there was a change, slow. But Haryana policies are different to the policies of Orissa. You have to sell everything through the mandi system. You can't do it direct, buy. And mandis में जानते हो आप लोग क्या होता है कि रखना MSP मिल रहा है नहीं मिल रहा, but you leave it or you take it back. Especially vegetables, perishable items. So this kind of a change which needs to be taken in today's context must be realized by us all. The second thing is during demonetization, what happened? There was no liquid cash. That poor 1.5 acre guy farmer, he can't get money for logistic support. That guy who's going to lift your mal, he needs cash. Now, because of our digital technology, and this guy from IIT Kharagpur, McKinsey's left everything, started working with the farmers, our partner with Grand Hyatt Foundation, the leader, Mr. Anish Jain, had already done the backward linkages on digital platforms. So all those farmers who had joined us had no challenges. Because the money transfer took place immediately. And at least that lot benefited hugely. So that encouraged others also over time. And many other farmers have joined. And today, I was talking to a gentleman before, that my focus remains on quality rather than quantity. I don't want to span India or I've touched billion lives and we've done so many farmers. Sorry, that is a good thing to say, but I'd rather say in numbers which are genuine, original, smaller, then go to scale. So we've done from soil testing to actually capacity building, to market linkages, to finance institutions. 𝘁cie𝗱𝘆𝘀 came forward to give the loans. I mean, you don't get the SBI. We contacted them. The idea is recovery. Recovery कैसे करेंगे छोटे farmers से? चाहे वो 10,000 रुपए के चाहिए. And those issues, of course, become challenging. So one was this. And the second is sustainable waste management. Please get involved into waste. COVID times was a very big challenge. Today also remains a challenge. But waste management is some area which not many of us are engaged in. With partnerships, through the networking, get this on board and move forward. And the third thing is business and human rights. So with business and human rights, when I speak on those three pillars of John Draghi, who passed away last year, he was the rapporteur with the United Nations. And then the business and human rights UN guiding principles came about. The first pillar is protect, which is the government's responsibility and state's responsibility. The second pillar is of respect. And the third pillar is remedy. So second pillar of respect is our responsibility of corporates. When I was invited to speak at the United Nations, we harped on this of creating an India CEO forum on business and human rights. Mr. Narayanamurthy was the chair, I was the convener, we did a lot of work around it. That's the first India CEO forum ever in the world. So they invited and I spoke about this. I said the second pillar of respect is most essential for corporations. And I wish somebody is listening, because nobody understands this. But now with ESG, with human rights agenda high on the procurement and the investors across Europe, across the world, suddenly there is a wake-up call. So I thought I'll touch upon this. And last bit is on learning and sharing. You must share what you've done. There are a number of reporting formats. You all are all quite clear about it. But it's also important for us to link up to the SDGs. The Sustainable Development Goals in the Sustainability Agenda needs that which activity covers 4.1, 6.7, 11.7, and such indicators give you some sort of a sense that you are contributing towards the agenda of sustainability, both in India and abroad. And I think if we work towards this, we will be able to benchmark our reporting standards in a formative way, which will be acceptable, which will be respected. And therefore, to conclude, I would just like to say, partnerships, SDG 17 is critical for business houses. To scale, partner with the government. For collaborative mode, try and partner with corporations. And if you can't do any of that, then make sure as an individual, be sensitive toward one another, care for another one. And that is what is the change in today's challenging stance of the environment in the CSR domain. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for the
Thank you.
opening remarks and setting the context.